Welcome back to Simbright Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to make this beautiful bustier BUBU kaftan. You are seeing right there on the thumbnail, on the video. So I'll be teaching you how this kaftan is sewn perfectly well together with the bustier, as you can see. So this BUBU kaftan with bustier is actually trendy, and you can actually use this to make different beautiful BUBU styles with bustier, as you can see. Okay, so I will advise you to stay to the end of this tutorial if you really want to learn how this beautiful BUBU gown is made. Okay, you can see the bustier is actually fitted on the bodies, and the flare kaftan part is actually sewn appropriately. So stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. So we'll be starting off this tutorial by drafting a bustier pattern first. So here you can see my basic bodies pattern, and this dress is actually going to be a princess dart. So here is the center front line. This is my bust point, chest line bust point, under bust point, and my waistline or the front length. So now I've already imputed my dart. My dart is 1.5 and my bust dart is 2 inches. Okay, so the half length of this is 17. So that means my back length, when I'll be drafting the back length, will be 15 inches. The bust dart will be the difference between this and this, which is 2 inches. Okay, so now the first thing we will do is to draft the princess dart. So for the princess dart, this is my mid armhole line. So at that mid armhole line, I'll simply come down by 1 inch. So once I come down by 1 inch, I'll just go ahead and position my pattern ruler. So you can see how I'm placing. So make sure you place your ruler very appropriately. So here I've placed my ruler, and I'll come out a little bit here by 1 inch. This is my 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect this to the armhole. Of course, we have different types of princess dart, but I will use this simple one for this tutorial. So now I'll come over to the under bust line. This is the under bust line. So I'm going to take my under bust circumference divided by 4. So my under bust circumference divided by 4 is 8.75. Then I have a difference of 1.5. So my waistline divided by 4, that is what I marked here, 9.5. And I replace the dart of 1.5 here. Can you see? So you need to replace your dart before you contour your under bust. So here I place my tape on the center front, and I take my under bust circumference divided by 4. Then I have 1.5 left. So I'll be putting 0.25 here and 1.25. The 0.25 and 1.25 will give us this 1.5. So if you have been following us on this channel, you will see that this is the best method we use for contouring the under bust for all sizes, and you have exactly what you desire on the bust line. So I'll connect this to this and connect this to this. So here we have our princess dart. Okay, so I'm going to use this very simple princess dart pattern. So now I will come over to the neckline. So from the center front, my neckline is 4 inches and my neck depth is 4.5. So I love to do this, make like a square this way, so I'll be able to sit my neckline ruler very well. So I'll just sit it in between the lines, as you can see. So here I have my princess dart. So this is F1 and this is F2, and here is going to be on fold. So I'll just go ahead and cut out this pattern right away. So I'll be placing this on my Ankara for the upper part of this dress. That is the bustier part of this dress. This is actually a bustier kaftan, as you can see right there on the video and on the thumbnail. So here I'll just go in to my princess dart this way, that way, and separate the center front. Then I'll come over to this other dart this way, that way. So make sure you sit your ruler appropriately. Okay, then I'll come by the side, I'll cut into my bust accommodation, then I'll go through my armhole which I replaced, and then I'll come back to the princess dart. So that is how the princess dart pattern is going to look like. So next I will do, so coming over to the back, the back does not have a dart, so I'm doing this dartless, but here I've contoured my back already. Okay, so what I have here is the back contour line to avoid zip bulge. So, and what I have here is the replacement of, because as I contour to the neckline, I have to take my bust circumference again, divide by 4, 10 inches, and my waist circumference divide by 4, 9.5 inches. So I'll just go over to the neckline. So neckline here is 4 by 2. I'm using 4 by 2 for the back. So this is 2 inches. So I'll just place my pattern ruler from there to create the back neckline. So this neckline, you can create it by choice. Alright, so that's how I want it to look like. Now we are going to cut out. This is the back pattern which I've cut right now. And here is the zipper position. Okay, here is the waistline for the back. Then I'm going to close up my bust dart right now. So I'll just go ahead and close up the bust dart for the bust here. So this pattern, I'll simply place my fabric on this pattern now, and I'm going to cut out the dress. Okay, that is the half bodies. Then we are going to move over to the skirt part now. Okay, so we are going to cut our skirt part directly on the Ankara. So this is what our princess dart is going to look like at the end of the day. So I'll cut it on fabric now. So now we want to start up the cutting of the down part of the skirt. So to cut out the down part of the skirt, the first thing you are going to do is to fold the down part of the skirt. So this part is on fold, and I left 1 inch. So how did I know what I folded from my 6 yards? This is it. I have to take from my center front line. Okay, my hip divided by 4 is 12.5. So this is the mark of 12.5. Then I added half an inch for ease, because this is a fitted dress, and I added 1 inch for my stitching allowance. So everything here gave me 14 from center front. That is the width of what I folded. Then 1 inch, okay, for my zipper. So once you have divided your hip by 2 and have added half an inch for ease, then you cut out the rest Ankara, because I'm working with 6 yards, so I'm folding them bit by bit. So I just cut out the rest of it. So whatever your hip circumference is, just do what I did right here. Fold it and have your seam allowance. You can see 1 inch is my seam allowance, and I folded from the starting point. So now I'm going to create the border line. So this border line is going to be my starting line. So just leave 1 inch and create your border line. So note that we've drafted the upper bodies. So since you have drafted the upper bodies, you place your tape on your waistline. So my waist is 17. You can see me placing my tape at 17. Now I'm going to mark my hip, because that is the next after my waist is my hip. So my hip is 29. I'll mark the 29. I'll go over to my knee. So my knee circumference is 41. That is the position of my knee. But if you notice, you can see on this skirt and on this gown, we have a flare attached to it. So that flare attached to it, from my knee position, I'll count 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 inches, and I'm going to mark. Some people even go as high as 4 inches. So but the standard is 3 inches from your knee. 41, I'll count 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that 3 inches I'm going to mark. So once I mark at that 3 inches, I'll also do what? Add half an inch for seaming allowance. So this is it. So that half an inch I'll just mark. That is for my seaming allowance. Then I'll come over to my hip. I'm going to create my hip line, and this is my waist line already. Now I'm going to impute the measurements of this is the center front. You can see the center front is on fold, and the zipper line, we have 1 inch to it. So I'll take all my measurements from the waistline. Okay, this skirt does not have a dart. So since it does not have a dart, simply divide your waist circumference divide by 2. So my waist circumference divided by 2 by 4 is 9.5. I will mark. Then I'll add 1 inch for my seaming allowance. That is 10.5. So I will mark. Now after extending all these lines, okay, for the back, you need to extend it. Then we are going to cut out the front only. Okay, so to cut out the front, you just raise your fabric this way. Okay, so now I'm going to just cut out. Later we'll add our seam allowance because we have 0.5 to add, but let me just separate the front from the back. So I'll just follow the chalk lines and separate the front from the back. So I've already added my seam allowance of half an inch here. So I'll just cut only the front, please, only the front. Okay, so once I'm done cutting the front, I'll add half an inch for seaming. This is my waistline, but I'm just adding half an inch for sewing allowance. So please make a mark to show the upper piece of this dress. Okay, so I just fold it and keep. Then we'll come over to the back dress. So the way the back dress is, you can see the extension of our lines already. So I'll just open it up and extend this line so we can create the back. So the reason we are doing this, that we didn't cut together, is because there's going to be a boot shape here. Okay, all right, so once you have highlighted the lines, this is the waistline. I'll come back to the waistline now, and I'm going to take from the zipper allowance. I'll take my waist circumference again, 9.5. I'll add half an inch for ease, and I'll add 1 inch for sewing. So everything gives me 11. So already you know that we have from the center front on the hip line, we already have everything at 14. Okay, which is my hip divided by 4. plus half inch of ease and 1 inch for sewing. That is 14. Now I'll come over to the knee line. So let me connect this now first. So I'll just go ahead and do what? Place my pattern ruler. So I'm just repeating what I did on the front. I believe you understand. So I'll connect. Then come in here. Instead of going in by half an inch, okay, remember we got by 1.5. I'm going to share this 1.5 because we are going to have a boot shape at the hem. So this is what I'm going to do now. From the center front, you know I got 14 on the hip, and I told you to take 1.5, which is 12.5. So I'll simply go ahead from the center front and identify the 12.5. So this is the 12.5, and I will mark. Okay, so that is where I'm supposed to connect. But now, instead of connecting 12.5, okay, I'm going to measure from here the actual 14, which is the hip together with the sewing. Now from this 14, I'll go in by that 1.5 I'm supposed to take. I'll divide it by 2, which is 3/4 of an inch. So I'll go in from here, from this actual hip, by 3/4 of an inch, and this is the mark for my 3/4 of an inch. Then I'll connect from there for the back this way. Can you see? Now I will now come over to the zipper allowance and put the rest of the 3/4 of an inch. So I'll place my tape from the zipper allowance, and I'll measure 3/4 of an inch, which is 0.75, and mark. Now I'll connect what I have here on this so once I've marked that 3/4 or 0.75, I'll place my pattern ruler from that point to the hip line, including the zipper allowance. I'm doing this on the zipper allowance. Please don't do it inside. It should be at the zipper allowance. So I've connected. That is the boot allowance. Now I'll come over here. Remember, on the waistline we also contoured by 0.75. So I just come in by 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch on the waistline. I'll place my ruler this way and connect it back to that zipper allowance. So that is the boots allowance. You know you have the boots right there. So we need to create it. So after that, I'll simply go ahead and cut that back. So this, what I'm doing here, is very important. Please, it's very okay, which is the boots allowance we added right now. So you can see this small thing I cut out here is very, very important. Very, very important. Okay, so I'll just cut it all the way to this part and take them away. Then note that you have to replace what you took away from here, okay, for the waistline. So we are going to add the 0.75, which is the contour line, for the waist, 0.75. So from this point I'll add 0.75. So make sure you replace it so it's not short. So I'm going to recreate this line here right now back to the hip. So from there I'll replace it back to the hip. Can you see? So that at the end of sewing my 1 inch of my zip, if this is my 1 inch of my zip, I've sewn my zip. This becomes my new center back. So you can see my new center back from there. My hip waist divided by 4 is 9.5. Then half an inch for sewing and 1 inch. So everything balances off again. So I'll now cut the side of this from that new line I created to the hip, and then I will take it to the, so this is the down part. I'll just cut out this excess. Then I'll add half an inch for sewing the upper piece right now. So that is how to go about the back. So the next we are going to do is to cut out the flay. But before we cut out the flay, we need to work on the upper bodies and join this dress before we cut the down flay and the sleeve. All right, so now I'm done cutting my upper bodies pattern. So what I have here is the back pattern. I added 1 inch for zipper allowance and 1.5 inch for my to sew the sides. Okay, the same thing, I added 0.5 inch, 1.5 inch to sew the sides. This for the seam. This part is on fold, so I have both lining and fabric here. Okay, so I adding 0.5 inch all around to my neckline as usual. So I have all my linings. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and do what? Sew my bustier. I'll just go ahead and sew that the bustier to this part. Okay, so I'm going to pad off camera and sew. Of course, I know you know how to sew your bustier, so I'll just do that quickly. And if you don't know how to sew your bustier, I have a detailed video on how to sew the bustier. I will also link it on the description box below. So let me sew, so we'll proceed. All right, so now I'm done with my bustier. Okay, this is my lining and I've ironed it out, and I'm also done with the front bustier too. So the next thing I want to do right away is to couple them. Okay, I'm going to couple the back and the front right now. So this is the back pattern, so I'm taking it away. So I'll just go ahead and match it up this way, right side to right side. I'm going to sew off the 1.5 inches we added. I'll do that for both sides. So I'll couple the lining and the fabric. So after joining the shoulder seam lines for the fabric and for the lining on both sides, you'll be joining the upper part and the down part. As you can see, I've joined it now. Okay, so but you leave the sides open because this dress we are going to sew the flay, okay, on the sides, each side. Okay, so now I'm going to take the measurement of the flay. So to take the measurement of the flay, I'm going to arrange this properly. So I'll be going to take the measurement of that flay on the sleeve. So I'll arrange the shoulder seam lines. I'm taking it only at the front part, and we are going to multiply what we have by 2. So I'm going to measure from the shoulder seam line. I'll take the round armhole to my seam allowance. This is where my seam allowance stops, 9 inches. From that 9 inches, I'll continue to take the measurement on the seam allowance. So I'm gauging my seam allowance of 1 inch. I'm just gauging my seam allowance to the hem. So here I have 35 inches. So this 35 inches, I'm going to multiply it by 2. So because I measured only for the front, so 35 multiplied by 2 will give us 70. So we are going to cut 180 degrees flay for this. So that means I'll divide 70 by 3.14. So if I divide 70 by 3.14, you can do the calculation. Okay, so my radius will be about 22 points. So that is what I'm going to use to cut my radius for the flay. So if you look at one sleeve, you notice that one sleeve is doubled. Okay, so the first sleeve, I'm going to cut the first sleeve at 9 inches, and I'm going to cut the second sleeve at 15 inches. So if I add the hemming allowance and the stitching allowance, that will be 9 plus 1, 15 plus 1. So I'm cutting the first one at 10. Okay, I'm cutting the first one at 9 plus 1 and the second one at 15 plus 1. That's plus seam allowance, which will give me 10 and 16. So the radius is 22. So now for the first flay, I need a whole length of this plus this, that is 22 plus 10 for the first. And for the second flay, I need radius of 22 and length of 16. So this one will give me 38, while this one will give me 32. So any fabric I'm going to fold now, I'll have these both lengths for both of them. So but to make this easier, I have decided to use pepper, okay, to cut this so as to save my fabric. So like I said, there are so much flay in this dress, okay, on the sleeve, running all the way from the shoulder to the knee line. Then we also have the flay on the knee line to the hem. Okay, so like I said, 6 years is not going to be enough. 6 years of Ankara is not going to be enough. So I got myself, you saw when I showed you 6 years, that is about 12 yards. So by the time I cut out the flay on the other Ankara, whatever remaining, I will keep it. So but for the other 6 years, I'm using it for the bodies from shoulder to down. Then the sleeve, I'll use the other Ankara. I was unable to get the same Ankara, so I used an Ankara that looks alike, that is similar. So to cut this flay and save your fabric, I'm using pepper to do that. This is not the actual pepper. I will be using this pepper to demonstrate it in a small scale. Then I will now go ahead and do that on the main pepper and place on my fabric, which I'm going to show you right now. So now, if this is your fabric, you are going to get yourself fabric, okay, or let me say pepper, because I'm cutting on pepper, unless you want to cut on your fabric. So if you are cutting on pepper, that means that the length of your pepper you are going to have from one end to the other. You are going to actually join your pepper, okay. You can get a brown pepper for this. From one end to the other, you are going to have, for this part, I'm using what I have here. The highest number I have here is 38. So I'm doing 38 multiplied by 2, which will give me 70, about 70. Okay, 8 plus 8 is 16. Okay, that's 76. So your pepper from here to here should give you what? 76. And from here to here will now give you the 38. I'm doubling this part because we are cutting 180 degrees. So on this pepper of 76, I'll do what? I'll place it on fold because I'm cutting 180 degrees. So once I place it on fold, I'm using this pepper to demonstrate to you what I'm going to do on my main pepper. The pepper is actually so big, so I don't just want to, start using the pepper. So I'm going to take my time to repeat what I'm doing on this small scale pepper on my large pepper. So note that the length of my pepper is 38 times 2 on this length times 2. So what now I've folded it, it means that here will be 38, and here, because this part is on fold and single, will be 38. So now I'm going to use I'm going to mark out the radius of the largest, that is the second flay, okay, the one that will be inside. So this second flay, the radius is what? 22 for both of them. So I'll mark out the radius. So I place my tape here to mark the radius. So I'm going to assume my radius now is 6 inches, which is my 22. So this is my 22 inches. So this is what you are going to do. Place your tape on your pepper after you've gotten your actual length of pepper, and you mark out this radius. So this radius from here to here measures 22 inches. After that, we are going to measure the length of the longest flay, which is 16. I'll place my tape here on the radius, and I'm going to measure the length of the longest flea. So I'll just use the length of what I have here. Okay, so what I have here is about 6. So that will be the length of my longest flea, which is my 16. So I'm marking my 16 now. I'm marking my 16. So if you actually know how to cut a 180 degree, you should understand what I'm doing here. So I'm just making it easy. So this is the length of the longest flea, and this longest flea is 16 inches. Then the shortest flea is 10 inches. I'll still place my tape here and do what? And measure. I will use 4 inches as my 10 inches. Okay, so I'll measure that 4, and this is what I'm exactly going to do on my paper. So if I'm cutting now, I'll first cut this one. That is what I'll place on my paper to save fabric. So now I'll go over to my main paper. I will repeat what I just did here on this small paper. So I've cut, then I'll cut the radius. So once I get to my Ankara, I'll do what? I'll place it like this on my Ankara. Note that we are going to cut 2 times for the 2 sleeves. So each pattern is 2 times. So I'll first cut the length of the longest. Later, I'll come and cut the short flea, which is 10 inches. Okay. So make sure you mark the midpoint. The midpoint will be attached at the shoulder of this dress. So let me quickly cut it now. So at the end of cutting it, we are going to sew it this way. Okay, then we are also going to reshape. This flea. So let me just have the reshaping of this flea done immediately. So this part I have here now is the shoulder. It will be on the shoulder, and this part I'm going to reshape this part. So the reshaping of this part, I'll just go in. I will not tell you how many inches you are going to use or whatever. So I'll just keep shaping it to match up. Can you see? So if it's too long, you can do this. You can use your, like from the beginning here, I have 6. After 3 inches, you can mark. After 3 inches, you can mark 4. Let me do it. After another 3 inches, you can mark 2.5. Then 1. Just like that. That will be your guide. So you can just come down a little more. So I'll do this on my main paper. I just want to come down a little more. And I believe you understand what I did here. So this part is that part that will be on the knee line. I believe you understand. So this is how the shape is going to be. So by the time you now sew it on that knee line, you have the flea. Can you see? So the flea is already flaying out on its own. So I'm going to quickly repeat this now. This is what the shape will look like. When you finish cutting, this is what you have. You make a notch here for your shoulder. Then I'll show you how to attach this to the dress. So let's do that now. Alright, so this is the bigger pattern. Like I told you, I have to join my paper right now, and I place it on fold and repeated everything I did on the table. So you can see this is the pattern right now. So I've already marked out the radius, the length of the longer flea and the shorter flea at 10 and 16 inches. So now I'm going to cut the bigger flea right now. Now I've cut out the radius, as you can see, from the main flea. So I'm going to reshape the flea now and cut it out. So you can see how I reshaped it. I started from the tip to the mid flea. Okay, I just find the midpoint and reshaped it from there. So I'm going to cut it out now. So this is how the flea is going to look like now. So I'm going to place it on my fabric. I'm cutting 2 times of this, and I'll also cut lining for it. Right now I've cut out the flare, and I've added my seam allowance 0.5 0.5 on the radius and on the hem for stitching. So now I'm going to cut exactly the same. I have 2 pieces of this right here, so I'm going to cut 2 pieces of the lining now. So back to the flare right now. I'm going to cut out the 10 inches part right away. So you can see I've blended it into the tip where we have the knee part. So I'm going to cut it out now. So now I'm done cutting, as you can see right here, and I've added my seam allowance for the smaller flare. Okay, so make sure you notch the midpoint. You can see the midpoint right there, that will be on the shoulder. Please ensure you notch it. So now I'm going to cut the lining as well, then we'll start to sew them together. On with the cutting of the flare. Okay, so this is a smaller flare with the lining. So like I said, make sure you make a notch. So you can see I have my notch. This part is going to be on the shoulder when we sew it on the seam line, while this will run all the way to the knee line. So this is the bigger flare. So one will be on top like this. You can see the difference right here. So now we'll go over to the sewing of this flare. So this is for 2 sleeves. What I have right here is for 2 sleeves. So I'll just separate it now. Lining to lining and fabric. So I'll pick up one lining and I'll pick up one fabric. Okay. So that's how I'm going to sew them now. So like I said, you need to match notch to notch. So I'll just go ahead and hold it down on the notch. So the part I'm actually sewing is the down part. So once you hold it down, I will also prefer you notch midline for down and up. So now I'll go over to the machine and close up this side. I'll close it up from here to the end. So I will arrange it very well. Please make sure you arrange. You can even use your pins to hold them down. So for this edge, I'm going to sew, which is the flare part. I'm using my hemming gum, so that by the time I iron, I have that part well sewn. So I'll go over to the machine now to sew, top stitch, iron, then bring it back for you to see. I'm done sewing. You can see, and I've ironed it with the lining right there. So this is the notch, which is the center point. This is the smaller flare. So I'm going to come in with the bigger flare. So this is the bigger flare, the bigger one. So the bigger one, I've done ironing it too. So now I'm going to place the smaller flare on top of the bigger flare this way on the notch. Okay, so I'll go over to my machine now. I'm going to hold the both together as one. So by the time I hold the both together, this is what you have, this and this. So I'll do that now, then I'll show you how to sew this to the bodies. So I've joined them together as one piece right now. So this is the first layer and this is the second layer. So the next thing now is to match them together. So I've matched them together, and this remains the midpoint where we have our notch. So now I'll bring in the dress, and I'm going to first mark out my seam allowances. Okay, so I'll mark out my seam allowances on the sides of the dress now. Alright, so once you are done marking out your seam allowance, we are going to stitch the sleeve on the seam allowance. So I'll just bring in my sleeve right now. You know the normal way we sew our sleeve, you have to bring your lining and fabric together. So once you've brought the lining and the fabric together at the seam line, then I'm going to pick up my flare right now. So this flare, I have to also properly get the mid line. So this is the mid line here, and I'm going to sew from that mid line together with the line. So I will sew, go to my machine and sew till I get to this mark where I have my seam allowance. I will stop. I'll do the same and get to mark of my seam allowance. I will stop. Let me sew that, then at the end of the day this is what we'll be having. Then I'll come back to show you what next to do. Alright people, so you can see I've sewn from the shoulder line. I've sewn the flare. You can see I've sewn the flare on the armhole, and I stopped at the 1 inch seam allowance. I asked you to stop. I also did the same. I stopped at 1 inch. So you have to sew both lining as if you're attaching your sleeve. So after that, we'll pick up this part. Note that you have your seam allowances. So I'll push my lining because we want a neat finishing. So don't sew this part with your lining. We'll sew it the normal way we sew, lining to lining and fabric to fabric. So I'll go ahead and do what? And start stitching. I'll start stitching on that line I marked. That is the seam allowance mark. You know it's 1.5, 1.5 I gave, and I marked all through. So I'll stitch and stitch and stitch to the end of it now. So I'll do that for both of them. Alright, so now I'm done sewing the flare sleeve. So you can see I've attached it on the armhole line, and I have to also leave the lining and attach the flare sleeve only on the seam allowance. Okay, so I did that only on the seam allowance for all of them, leaving the lining on it. So I did it for the both sides. So the next thing I want to do now is to sew the zipper, so it will be easy for us to do what? Sew this the size of this dress. So I'll just go ahead now to sew my zipper. So I'm actually going to use a long zip. So of course you know how to sew your zipper. I'll just go in and take the measurement of my zip and make a mark. Okay, so I'll leave about 1 inch, make a mark, then join this together. You know how to sew your zipper. Okay, so just go ahead and sew your zipper. So I'm going to sew my zipper now, close up here and sew my zipper and turn it with lining. Alright, so now I've sewn my zipper. Okay, so I've also, this is what it looks like on the lining. So we have a neat inseam finishing. Okay, so this dress is all about neat inseam finishing. Inside will be neat, outside will be neat, no seam lines except on the sleeve. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do now, the dress is almost getting ready. So the next thing I'm going to do is to close up the sides of this dress. So we are going to close up the sides of this dress the normal way we do close our sides. We are going to sew lining to lining, and we are going to sew fabric to fabric. So I'll just open it up this way, and I'm going to pick it up this way. So coming over to that seam line. Okay, this is the same armhole seam line part where we attach the sleeve on the bodies. I'll pick it up this way, pick up this way, only seam fabric. So I'm going to match it this way, can you see? And I'm going to sew following this seam line. So I will just close everything up. I believe you understand the gist of what we are doing. So I'll do that to the end, and I'll do for both sides, and I'll come back to show you how to sew the flare on the knee part. I'm done now. I've closed up the side of this flare. Okay, so you can see the side is very neat, as you can see here. So now the next thing we want to do is to sew the flare on the down part. So to sew the flare on the down part, you are going to measure what you have on the knee line from one point to the other. So here I have 22 inches. So this 22 inches, we are sewing this flare around this knee line. So here is 22 times 2 will give us 44. So now I'm going to calculate my flare. We are also using 180 degrees flare for it. So this 180 degrees flare now, we are going to calculate it now. So we are using our calculation for 180 degrees, which is equal to 3.14. So I got 22 on one side times 2, that is 44. Then we'll be dividing it by 3.14, and here I have 14 inches as my radius. So if this is the fabric you are going to use now, okay, that is the remaining part of the fabric I reserved for the flare part. Now I'm going to fold this remaining of my fabric I reserved this way. That is how to go about your 180 degrees. So I'll fold it this way, and then I'll come over and measure my radius. So my radius from here to here now is, I'll use 2 inches to represent that my 14 inches radius, since I'm showing you this on a small paper. So now note that we need to measure the length of this flare to the floor level. So my full length to the floor level for this particular dress is 63, because I added 3 inches to allow it flow on the floor, and in case you are going to wear a heel as well. So remember that on the knee line we measured 38 when we were cutting the knee. So I'll now take minus 38 from here. So if I minus 38 from here now, I have this is 13, take away 8, I'll have 5 inches, remaining 5, 25. So the length of my flare now is going to be at 25. So I use 3.5 to represent my 25. So this is just 180 degrees flare I'm cutting for the down part. So exactly what I'm doing here, that's what I'm going to do on my fabric right now. So this is my radius. The radius here is 14 inches according to my own calculation, and the length of the remaining flare to the floor level, I'm using 25 inches. So I'll now go ahead and do what? Cut out. So I'm going to cut my Ankara now at 180 degrees, both lining and fabric. I'll do that now and show you how to join it to the knee line, and we are done with this project. Alright, so right now I'm done cutting the 180 degrees flare, and I've separated the radius right now. So I'm going to use this same pattern for the fabric to cut the lining. So this is the flare I just cut. So I'm going to find the midpoint of this flare and make a notch. So here I've already made a notch to the midpoint. So now I'll now find the right side. Find the midpoint of the lining. The lining is also cut the same way, 180 degrees as the fabric. So this is the upper part where we are going to attach to the skirt piece. So I'll now turn it to the down piece and find the midpoint. So I'm going to sew from end to end using my hemming gum right now. I'll sew to the end. Alright, so this is what your 180 degrees flare is going to look like after you are done joining it with the lining. So I've given it a good press at the edges. So the radius part now, I'm going to sew it to the down part of the dress. Alright, so this is how I ironed it. I brought out a little of Ankara after top stitching my flare, okay, and give it a good press. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get the edges of this dress. You can see the edge of the flare. So I actually used my hemming gum, so that's why it's sticking. So you can see it's sticking together. So I'm going to close these edges. I'll bring the other edge because I don't want to have any seam line showing. So I'll match it up together, edge to edge, and I'll go over to my machine. I'm going to sew from that end to the end and from the lining to the lining, so I'll be able to have a neat finishing. This is what my flare, how my flare is with the lining well finished. So I'm going to pick up the side I joined, okay, this part that is joined. I'm going to use it, place it at the center back. So this will be my center back. So I'll now come over with the dress. So I'll take off this and I'll come back with the dress now. So I'll just go ahead and do what? Open up the side seams of this dress, because I'm going to attach seam to seam. I'm going to attach it this way and stitch the lining and the fabric together, so we'll be able to sew the flare. So let me do that. The down part, I've stitched the lining and the fabric together already, so you can see what we have right here on the dress with the sleeve. So it's time for us to insert what we have for the flare, which is the down part. So I'm going to turn this dress to the back. I'm turning everything to the back, so you can see that the back we have a perfect inseam finishing, which I told you before, apart from the sleeve. Okay, so the sleeve, we are going to search that part. So for this part now, I'm going to pick up this center back. This is the center back where we have the zipper. I'll open it up this way. You can see how I did that. Then I'll bring in my flare and I'll insert my flare inside this way. Once I have done that, I'll find the center back. So this is the center back. I'll match it to the center back and I'll use my pin to hold onto this flare and the upper part. I'll just go and sew around it. I've stitched the down part, the 180 degrees flare. I've stitched it to the bodies of this dress. You can see that, okay? So that is how we come to the end of this tutorial, and I believe this class was helpful to you. So if you are new to this channel, please kindly subscribe, turn on your notification bell to receive videos like this every day. Like this video, share to family and friends, drop your comment on the comment section and your suggestions as well. Thank you once again. See you in the next class. Bye.